Hello, good morning. So today I will be responding to a claim that is college athletes deserve to be paid. The secondary claims for that are college athletes are putting in countless hours of training, college athletes are at high risk for injuries, and that college athletes bring in lots of revenue. So responding to the first initial claim, it is a borderline value claim that we should be paying these people, or maybe a policy claim that we should be paying the college athletes for the work that they're putting in. So in response to the first claim, the college athletes are putting in countless hours of training. There is no real dispute in that area. College athletes have been said that it is mostly like a full-time or sometimes part-time or sometimes full-time job to play and compete at the level necessary for these sports. But he goes on to talk about the main dispute in this, that the NCAA has a rule that states that Division I athletes cannot partake in the workforce, therefore not gaining any money on the side that they may need to, buy food with, buy gas, pay rent with. But I looked into it, and actually on the NCAA's website, I think that his evidence that he got was old, because they now have a new rule that says you can work, but there's some restrictions to it. So you can do work, you just can't make more than $2,000, and you have to have whatever party you're signing with sign a contract that is issued by the NCAA saying that you will not be getting paid more money compared to your coworkers because of any stardom or any royalties that you might bring that company with your status as a college athlete. So those laws or those rules set down by the NCAA are set in place to help protect the athlete from being used or abused by the store owners, instead of it being the other way around, where the athletes are getting kind of shut down by the NCAA. The next claim that college athletes are high risk for injuries is also one that is kind of indisputable, because they are playing, most of them are playing physically active sports. There's a lot of overuse injuries. There's a lot of critical injuries that happen. But the main dispute in his argument was that the NCAA doesn't do much to pay for medical bills or injuries that happen on the court, and then it ends up being a career-ending injury. The NCAA actually requires that if you were to become a collegiate athlete, student athlete, that the schools provide you with some sort of medical insurance. How much that is varies on the school. So before you take that contract and before you sign the paper that says you're going to become a student athlete for that school, you are covered by the medical insurance. The NCAA also does have medical insurance policy by themselves that you then can apply for if you do get hurt in the field. So saying that this is a career-ending injury is true. It's a very true fact that it could be a career-ending injury, but there are safeguards and safeties in there for that person to then go back to school, which is actually the main focus of the NCAA, is that they're student athletes, not athlete students. The NCAA has always stated that they are having students play sports in college, not the other way around, where they're having sports come and learn at their institutions. The last thing is that college athletes bring in lots of revenue. My opponent focused largely on football and basketball, because those are the two sports in all the NCAA that do produce numbers that generate a lot of revenue and a lot of profit. He forgot, though, that there are actually 89, he forgot to mention there are 89 sports recognized by the NCAA, which then brings in some issues. If the football players are getting all that revenue, or the basketball players are getting all that revenue, then what happens to, say, the tennis team, the water polo team, the swimming team, the track and field team? Do they not get paid the same amount for that stuff? And since it is a widespread organization, there's a lot of arguments that would be unfair to all the student athletes in the program, or in the organization of the NCAA. They actually have more than 450,000 athletes, and the amount of revenue they bring in is actually not as much as you would think. So if you think about how much money they bring in, the 2013 on the NCAA.org stated on their financial records that they made $60,908,876 as their net total at the end of the year in 2013. So if you split that up amongst all of their athletes, which is roughly 450,000, you're actually only making per athlete $135.35 per year. So the amount of total that you can actually give every student at an equal and fair rate is not enough money to get them by for anything. So the fact that they do produce, you know, 60 million is a great amount of money, but you also have to think about all the schools and all that the NCAA encompasses. So, thank you very much for listening, and I hope I changed some minds.
I'll take the tea.
Why am I saying this? I don't feel that's weird.
All right, Spencer, the identification of the claim and the secondary claims was fine. I do think that you are acknowledging that there are sometimes policy and value ramifications of the issues that are being presented, and that as a consequence, some of the arguments that you're going to be making are going to have to kind of bounce into that area. I think that's the inference that you want us to acknowledge, that these kinds of things are going to happen. There is a challenge on a pretty straightforward factual dispute about whether or not athletes can earn money outside of school, and you've got a very clear reference to NCAA rules about that, and you do explain that the limitations are put into place in order to limit exploitation of those athletes. So I thought that that was interesting. One of the things that comes up as a question is going back to what the advocate's original argument was. If an athlete can work and earn $2,000 outside of their job, let's say in the months that they're not playing basketball or football, they're doing summer, they've got a summer job, something like that, and they earn $2,000. Would that $2,000 be sufficient to cover the things that the advocate claims are insufficient, that they don't have enough money to, go to a party or see a movie or any of that kind of stuff because they can only eat in the dorm and sleep in the dorm and have this monk-like life, which seems to be the argument. And if that $2,000 is enough to kind of fill in the gap, that would be good. The other thing that you could point out, just occurs to me, is that, of course, student athletes could be like every other student out there, and they can acquire money the way that most of us acquired money. Yeah, you take on some debt, and say, okay, fortunately you wouldn't have to take on quite as much debt because I've got $40,000 in scholarship. I only need to borrow $4,000 for my books and things, so I've got some money that's available to me, and I don't have to worry about it. I think that would be a potential argument on this issue too. On the injury thing, I think you do point out that the medical insurance thing, I think, is a good response on that. And kind of the philosophy comes into play here, and that's an important one, that these are athletes who are playing sports. They are not, students who are playing sports as opposed to athletes who are going to school. It's that their emphasis really is on going to school, and that the NCAA makes sure that their medical issues are taken care of. The only thing that I see as being a potential issue here is whether or not an athlete, for instance, who gets injured, do they lose their scholarships or any problem like that? That would have been a good argument to have on that, so that they can in fact stay in school and they can continue to prepare themselves. And by the way, I think you might also want to point out, you mentioned that there are 450,000 student athletes, and what number of them ever end up in a professional league getting paid for their jobs. In other words, the truth is that there's a very small number of all of the athletes that would have what we would call a career-ending injury. It's career-ending if you thought that football was going to be your career. And that will be the case for 70 athletes each year, who get drafted, make teams, actually stay on the teams. We get a lot of people who get drafted. That doesn't mean that they are going to have successful careers. And I think that that's another way to maybe minimize that argument. And I did like your analysis of how much, if we give them all equal amounts, that's not going to be very much. And if we don't give them equal amounts, that creates huge problems. I think the second part needed to be elaborated a little bit more. Okay. All right, thank you.